Awesome. So we are recording, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining our first virtual meeting. And obviously everybody knows why this is happening, so there's a good chance that our next several meetings, who knows, might all be virtual, which means spread the word, spread the love. But it does mean that no pizza, unfortunately. And Bogdan, I'm sorry I lied earlier about the pizza on its way to you. So we have a nice agenda. It's kind of packed today, so we're going to try and get cranking pretty quickly. We're gonna obviously do our usual and welcome everybody who's new. And with that, is there anybody on this room right now who's here for the first time with us today?
You can answer in the chat window, probably.
Yes, please, chat window, or raise your hand.
So Edward's here for the first time, Bogdan's here for the first time. Yeah. And when we say here for the first time, we're talking about Richmond developer user group, not the fact that we're on the meeting for the first time.
Yes.
Oh, Lord. Indeed. So, well,
yes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say welcome. Yeah.
We do have some swag to give out, so you'll have to wait. You may remember that when we had our global gathering, I said we have the badges that were delivered after. So they're right here. Yay! I can hand them all. So here, one for you, one for... anyways, we're going to start today with the release notes. We're doing, as you can tell, since Lacey is here, and hopefully you all know, we're doing a combined meeting today, admins and devs. So we'll do release note review for admin centric and then dev centric cool stuff. And then we'll continue on to jump on DX for admins and talk a little bit about why admins should use DX and what you could do with it. And we'll finish with that. So yes, of course, it's being recorded and we will share it on our YouTube channel. We have attempted to record our previous DX sessions and unfortunately had some technical difficulties. So I wish I could have shared those recordings, but this one is recorded. We have obviously are all here. So John, introduce yourself.
Yeah. So I'm, of course, John Daniel. I am a Salesforce architect and MVP here in Richmond. And I work for a company called B3 Group. B3 Group. We are in the government contracting space, and I am the platform lead for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So.
Sweet.
Ohad?
Oh, thank you. So Ohad, most of you know me. I'm founder of Praxis Solutions. We're a consulting organization doing anything Salesforce. And just like John, I am a Salesforce MVP. And FYI, John was just renewed for his second year in a row being an MVP.
Yay!
Yeah, of course, Ohad was renewed as well, so that's good. Thank you.
Well, you win some, you lose some. Yes, I was renewed as well. Thank you. And Lacey?
Hi, everyone. I am the lead of the Salesforce admin user group. I am currently a Salesforce administrator at Capital One, and I am not an MVP. Not yet.
We'll get you there. Okie doke. So we'll just jump right into it. And our goal here today is obviously we're not going to go over the 540 something pages of release notes, but just to bring into your attention some of the more meaningful and substantial release features that at least we found interesting. And so, Lacey, without further ado.
It's all about what we find interesting. So
it's all about us, always.
So this is just really high level what we're going to go over. So actually, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide and we'll just get started. So first, there's a new app launcher experience. So before, with the app launcher experience, it was the entire page and it was every single app that you possibly had access to. They've actually updated the app launcher experience to highlight the ones that you are most interested in, the ones that you click on the most. If you're more interested, you can also search And if you're more interested in additional apps, you can also click View All in order to get the older Lightning experience. So
I gotta say, this is definitely a feature that I find is extremely meaningful to me, because in a lot of the orgs that I work with, we have, you know, so many tabs and so many things we need to navigate, objects we need to navigate to, and it was always the pain of either adding it to your tab, you know, your custom tab, or having to switch between the apps, or opening the entire launcher and searching for it. And now it just, you know, the quick click and search for it and get to it quickly. To me, this is unbelievably useful.
I didn't realize how badly I needed it until I had it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So next we have the recycle bin. Again, this is something that I was really excited for. So we finally have the recycle bin in Lightning. Woo! Couple of additional changes. It's called the org recycle bin instead of a recycle bin. Sure. Also, instead of, it's in the list view format, so you can actually do like a mass restore, mass delete, which you can see indicated by the 2 and the 3. So restore, you still restore up to 50 days, and you can delete in order to just hard delete, get rid of everything.
You can actually create list views now that are a little bit more granular. Before it was just either yours or everything in Classic.
That's it. So, yeah. Next is the Chrome extension. You can start doing dark mode, which is really cool. So if you're in a low light area, this is a little bit easier on your eyes. The way you access this is the Chrome extension gives you early access to a lot of really cool features. Right now, the last time I looked, there was only a couple features, dark mode being definitely the coolest. There's also link grabber, but they're adding in more features every day. So
I will say this, if you use the Salesforce extension, which you very well may, be aware about the link grabber, because essentially the link grabber, the idea is that, you know, if you click links from emails or whatever, it all opens in one tab. But the downside of it is you actually are not able to open additional Chrome tabs or browser tabs. So if you try to like open in a new tab, or if you just try to clone a tab, the extension will actually close it right away. Mm-hmm. And I've had people who used it and could not figure out why they can't open a tab until told them you have the link grabber on. So just be aware it has some sometimes unintended consequences.
So now you can do more with calendar. So now you can hover over your calendar within Salesforce, and you can access key information designed by you, your admin. You can also edit and delete the meeting straight from your calendar instead of having to actually click into the event itself. Very cool.
Sweet.
Also, this is so cool. One of my favorites, queue assignments for tasks. So before you could only assign cases to queues, now you can assign tasks to queues. I think that this is going to just build so much more functionality. I know a few of my clients were using cases because they needed the queue when it didn't really fit, but now you can do queue assignments. So now managers can manage queues. Now users can delegate their own tasks. They can see tasks right from task list views. This is absolutely one of my favorite features.
Yeah, and I'll add, actually, you could have other objects can be owned by queues as well, but not tasks. So tasks were kind of stuck in that way. And in Classic, if you ever wanted to create a meeting, or I'm sorry, a task with multiple people, you could do it from the UI. You can select multiple people to assign. But what actually would happen is that Salesforce literally just created a bunch of tasks, and every task would be owned by one person. And this is really the way to get around it, right? By creating a queue, you can now actually assign a single task to a bunch of people. So I'm with you. Very, very useful.
Very cool. Now with Einstein Prediction Builder, Einstein Prediction Builder has been around for about a year. New with this latest release, we are able to have one free Einstein prediction. In every org above enterprise, you can check what your org is in the company information. You are also able to develop one dev org that gets one free prediction builder. So if you've always wanted to play around with Einstein and truly test its functionality, now's your chance. Here's a bunch of really cool flow builder updates. There were so many. I really kind of had to pick my favorites. So there's just 4 save updates. There's a lot of the updates that you'll want to do within flow builder that you want to update the record and you don't want it necessarily to go through the entire spectrum of assignment rules and auto response rules, workflow rules, anything else that gets triggered every single time you save a record. These are now you can do before save updates. So now it won't even trigger all of those. Also now, and this is in the vein of my existence as a flow builder user, every time that you selected a record, you had to manually also go and grab the information from that record. Now all of those fields are stored automatically, auto-magically, and you don't have to worry about doing that.
I'll say about that, this feature specifically, it's really cool because what actually happens behind the scene is the flow builder optimizes your queries. To those of us who understand a little bit more about that, but in essence, the flow builder will only query the fields that are used anywhere in the flow. So if you select, let's say you want to select some cases and you need to use some fields from there. Well, if you want to use that field anywhere later when you create maybe other records or whatever, you had to make sure you selected either all fields or select that field specifically from that object. Now, as long as you use that anywhere down, any field from that object, anywhere down from the flow will automatically know how to grab that when it does the query from the record to get the records. So really helpful, saves a lot of time as far as creating the flows for sure.
So much, yeah, it's much more user-friendly. Deactivate flow without leaving flow builder. Before you had to actually leave the flow in order to activate, deactivate, play around with it. Now you can just do it within the flow. Again, huge time saver. There's also system mode. You have the ability to, and I'm sure that there's a bunch of dev speak, but for my admins, now you can do system mode where instead of running as a logged in user, you can actually run in system mode bypassing all of your sharing rules and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and honestly, the only last thing I'll say and add to this is if you have not played with Flow Builder, if this was something that was intimidating to you, it's really now the time to start saying, okay, it's worth looking into. Flow Builder has become so much more user-friendly. It's still more complex than Process Builder, but it has become easier to get into it and understand what it does. And it's really the future of process automation in Salesforce. So it's definitely kind of a safe harbor statement, but Flow Builder is the future of automation in Salesforce. So the earlier you get in it, the more knowledgeable you'll be when the time comes where this is what you need to use.
Yeah. Even I've looked at it. If I've looked at it, that's terrible.
Honestly, listen, Flow Builder has become a phenomenal way even for developers to create sometimes a quick way to handle something that Process Builder or other automation mechanism can't. And so with Flow, you can actually do a lot. And the fact that you can create, screen flows, you can do a lot of really cool things today with Flow that it has become from something that I used extremely rarely, a year or 2 years ago to something that is always now an option for us to consider using when we develop solutions for customers. Yeah. So definitely has been made a first-class citizen in the platform.
So there's a question about how the Flow Builder is handling in bulk updates, bulk data record updates. So comments, thoughts?
So Flow does bulkify. You could create non-bulkified flows, meaning you could do actually an update within a loop. And just like the first thing we tell developers, you need to bulkify, work with collections, and then do the update after you exit the loop. Having said that, if you try to compare between Flow and code, which one is more effective or more efficient, code will always be more efficient. And that's just because of the nature of declarative development. Declarative development needs to have a level of abstraction that doesn't need to exist in code. And by that, to those of us that aren't developers, what do I mean by level of abstraction? Flow needs to have a UI that can do a whole lot of different things. With code, you can be a lot more specific. So because of that kind of having to create something that can do more, it also takes a little bit more system resources without getting too complex, granular with the explanation. But code will always be a little bit more effective. Flow has become much more efficient also with its management of resources in the last year and a half, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, cool.
All right, now we have the ability to deep clone. We can clone a record with all of the related lists. For right now, this only works with opportunities and campaigns, but they are looking at expanding this functionality. So before, what we used to, whenever you cloned, you still wouldn't be able to clone with all of the different related records. So if you had assigned tasks or anything, that wouldn't necessarily clone. Now you're able to do that, again, with opportunities and campaigns. Very handy.
Yeah, I'm very interested about the future of this, because the deep clone is something that we've built many times in other use cases. And if this can become something that you can use with custom objects with related objects, that could be fascinating.
I'm assuming that the deep clone won't work on custom objects that are looking up to the opportunities or something like that, right? Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. No problem.
Related list quick filters. So again, if we're looking at an opportunity and, or if we're looking at an account and the account has like 50 opportunities and you really only need to see the ones that are, let's say, closed won, now you're able to actually click into that related list and you're able to just filter that out really quickly.
Is this something that's available on any related list or only for opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's any related list.
Okay. Because I haven't actually seen it. Do you need to configure anything for this? I don't know if you know. I may be stumping you.
Yeah, you're stumping me a little bit. Yeah, happy to look that up though.
Okay, thanks. I didn't mean to.
I think you might have to enable. You might have to enable something. Yes, that sounds right. I think you have to enable something, but we'll look into it.
Okay.
Cool. Reports. There's two really cool features of reports. The first is comparing fields to each other. So for instance, if you wanted to filter opportunities that had higher projected values than actual values, you can do it within the report itself. Before we used to have to, these are basically replacing formula fields that we would actually have to have in the opportunity just for the reports. This is now, if you wanted to, again, only have opportunities that had higher projected values than actual values. So if you came in undervalued. And then also show unique count. That replaces the famous formula field value of 1, I think it's called. If you're running, power of 1, thank you. If you're running a report on opportunities and you only wanted to show the unique number of accounts that had opportunities, now you're able to show that unique count.
These two features have been in the IDEA community for over 10 years. So these are something that if you've ever been to Dreamforce, to the True to the Core session, where everybody beats on Parker Harris, now last year, Brett Taylor, these were always being asked, when are we going to get this? Why is it taking so long? So there's a lot of people that are now very happy with these deliverables.
Very exciting.
Yeah, so, sorry. Okay, so talking about some releases for developers. So I'll focus on a few things that I thought were really interesting, and then I'll kind of briefly go over a bunch of things that we just don't have the time to go into, but just I think it's useful to know that they exist. So the first thing, this is a new keyword you can use in SQL queries called with security enforced. So in the past, when you were writing code, you needed to manually check if a field is available for a given user. And even further, you needed to make sure that the user can update that field when you try to do a DML. And what they've done now is they've added this with security enforced, which I have a typo here in the title. But with security enforced, now basically the SQL engine will handle all of that behind the scenes for you. So you'll only get fields that the user has access to from profiles or permission sets.
Okay.
And obviously, as I mentioned, only available in Apex. So cannot be used in APIs at this point. This is exactly related to this. So we have this new notation security.strip inaccessible. You can use that on any S object, and it will strip any users any fields, again, I'm sorry, that are inaccessible to the current running user. So that's extremely useful, again, when you want to make sure that you don't try to update fields that the user should not be able to update from code. And even further, you can use the strip inaccessible even when you have serialized data. When you deserialize data, you can use the security.strip inaccessible, and you can then get all of your data sanitized against the user who's currently running the code. So extremely helpful in the sense that you can control the security much more easily now. Requires a lot less manual work. In the past, it's just something that you needed to know that you need to do, and you needed to be able to build it. Now you just need to know that you can use this new keyword.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge because, I mean, we've had to go, historically, we've had to go and write actual open source frameworks to manage the entire complexity about does the person have access to a field or not, and strip this out. And it was kind of kludgy in those solutions to begin with. So now that, you know, we have this as a first tier function, it just makes life easy. Another thing to think about is you can strip inaccessible. I think you did allude to it in the fact that it's a, you can strip deserialized data, but really also what that really means is it doesn't actually have to be queried for you to exercise this function. So it's just a matter of where are you getting this object from. You can strip it and make it usable for the user anytime you want.
Yep. Yeah, and this is actually directly from the developer guide. You know, use the strip inaccessible method to sanitize S objects that have been deserialized from an untrusted source, right? So again, you could get a serialized piece of information, deserialize it, and then use that to make sure the user can't update you know, the fields that they're not allowed to update. You know, a lot of times when you run code can run as system level and so on. So this is, again, how you use that to make sure that your code doesn't accidentally do things that it shouldn't.
Well, we hope.
Yes. Okay. So now with invocable methods, in the past, you could only handle a specific set of object. So you had to define an invocable method with an input of a very specific S object. So you could say opportunity or whatever. You can actually now use the S object type, which means you can build more reusable invocable methods that can be used across multiple process builders, across multiple types of objects as the triggered object.
And what and the beauty of this is that we're going to reduce the there's always this running thought when you're developing, and that is the dry principle. You don't repeat yourself. And we have had a lot of challenges in the past where we've had to design specific Apex methods that are exposed in flow. And, you know, things like generic logging utilities or generic types of use cases that you would drop down to Apex, and you didn't necessarily have it specific to that one S object. In the past, we've had to invent multiple different methods and multiple different classes, each for the specific S object that we wanted to deal with. Now we can just sort of clean all that up and get it straight into the single use fit for purpose class.
Yep.
So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about reusability, right? Code maintenance, reusability. Okay. This is something that's right now is in pilot, so most people can't use it now, but I figured it was important enough to bring it up because this is a massive game changer, right? So you can now attach actions to asynchronous Apex jobs using the transaction finalizers. So if you have a queuable job that failed and you have an unhandled exception, your queuable will literally fail, and you know somebody may not know that the work that the queuable was supposed to do didn't get done, and really it's hard to handle failures, unexpected failures, except for writing maybe another scheduled job that looks for jobs that aborted or that are failed, right? And so now you can actually use a system.finalizer interface. It's an interface that allows you to define what happens when the job completes, and it separates this piece of what happens in the finalizer from the actual execution of the queuable job. So you could have a queuable job that has some kind of unexpected failure, and the finalizer still gets executed. So very fascinating and very exciting for us when we try to build you know, something that's some asynchronous process that needs to be extremely reliable. It's always required us to build additional tools to monitor the asynchronous execution, and now we can actually reduce that to using the finalizers.
You know, let's go back to that real quick, because this is a special type of pilot as well. I mean, normally you would have to be nominated by your account exec to get into a particular pilot, but this is sort of a free open range pilot that everybody can take advantage of. All you need is a Scratch org that is based in a dev hub that is on Spring'20 already, which all of them already are. So now you can just take anybody who wants to play around with this, please do so. There is a new Trailblazer community group that is hosted by the product manager around this. His name's Chris Peterson. And just look for transaction finalizing. You'll find that group. Everybody can join and start talking about the use cases. There's a lot of good discussion about it. There has been some interesting discussions about why and where this came about. If you're familiar with the Salesforce Developer podcast by Josh Burke. He did an interview a couple weeks back with Chris Peterson, who's the product manager, and they go into a lot of the details and the thought process behind it. It's very interesting stuff, opens up so many more possibilities. It's going to be exciting to watch.
Yep, and as John said, this is only available in Scratch orgs for now, so you can play with this. You won't be able to use it in production until it exits pilot.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to the bulk stuff. I'm not going to go into as much detail in this, but I think it's worth mentioning, so at the very least, you know it's there. So first of all, Lightning-based components are open source. John actually mentioned that in one of our recent DX sessions, but that has now been finalized. You no longer need to use the track decorator to make sure that a field is reactive. So that's, again, just a little bit less work you have to do. You can pass in default values into the records create page now from code. Again, something that we used to be able to do with Classic. Lightning kind of took away that ability from us, and now they brought it back. So the Lightning message service is kind of a way to unify how you can have visual forces, Aura, and Lightning components all communicate with each other. So that's a beta that allows us to do a lot of that cross communication between different technologies. And another thing that John talked about in one of our recent meetings is local development. So you can now actually develop Lightning web component locally. So meaning you don't need an internet connection. You don't need to commit to the server every time you save. Much faster for kind of the development lifecycle. That's it on the most meaningful things that I found on Lightning Web Components. And then just a few other things, again, worth mentioning. So the daily cap for API calls, you used to have 1 million API calls per day per 24-hour period. That has been completely eliminated. Salesforce realizes that everything is on the cloud now, and they've done a lot of work to support more capacity around APIs. Also, the default daily request allocation has been raised from 15,000 to 100,000. So that's a significant increase. And you can now actually monitor how you use your API calls with a new usage-based entitlement. So I think it's on the company info, you can now see the aggregate usage of your APIs over the last 30 days, which used to be difficult to kind of track unless you have some ways to do that. SQL queries. SQL query limit, string length limit used to be 20,000 characters. That means that if you have a lot of filters or a lot of fields you're selecting or a lot of subqueries, you could easily hit that 20,000 character limit. And it's been now basically increased ×5, right? So it's a significant increase, and just means you can optimize your queries much more efficiently, build queries with more complex subqueries and so on. More child-parent relationships in a query as well. You can now increase, been increased from 35 to 55 child relationships that you can include. So again, a lot more subqueries. I'm sorry, I think this actually talks about the relationships upward. So you can look up to 55 parent relationships. And then change data capture continues to evolve and get better. They now have more objects that can be supported by change data capture. email messages, product item, price book 2, quick text are just some of the more familiar ones to you maybe, but I think there's about 30 new objects they enabled for change data capture. So again, extremely fascinating to see how this is evolving. To those of you who don't know, change data capture is basically a type of platform event that is being generated automatically by Salesforce. So it just, again, continues to show how Salesforce is investing more in this kind of event-driven methodology. And we really do think it's, I mean, I really do think it's kind of the future of Salesforce. I've been a really big proponent of platform events since I started using them a couple years ago. So if you have not played with CDC or platform events in general, don't wait.
It is now time to do so. I mean,
don't wait.
It is definitely going to be one of the strengths of the platform going forward. I mean, especially when we get into true multi-threaded architecture and use cases where we need to do more than what the basic processes or the governance limits allow.
Yep.
Their platform events open up all kinds of interesting possibilities. And I echo what Ohad's been saying. Yeah, it's been awesome to play with that stuff over the past year.
Yep. We've been using platform events to solve a lot of really complex problems that in the past was either impossible or very difficult to solve in Salesforce, and we can now do some really cool things to increase performance speed and how quickly things happen, especially when we talk about asynchronous stuff. So go into it if you haven't already. Okay, so Salesforce has their blogs. The podcast for the developers now is out there, has been out there for several months now. Lacey, anything you want to add on this slide?
So they also have a trail mix set up for you all to do a deep dive into all of the features that we talked about here. And if you complete the trail mix by March 31st, which is 15 days from now, you'll get a fancy community badge, which will go towards your goal to get to Ranger this year. And you'll also unlock $10 to go to FIRST, which is a nonprofit charity that Salesforce supports. So I have the links here, and I'm assuming that this deck will go out, the links for both admins and developer trail mix.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, any questions?
No.
From anybody?
So this is basically kind of rolling up our release notes section. So at this point, if anybody has anything we didn't mention they want to bring up, then please let us know. I'm happy to unmute you and let you talk. Or if you have any questions about any of the items we discussed, then please use the chat window to type them up. We'll give you just a few seconds to do that, and we'll jump right into our DX for admins. And while you guys may or may not be typing any questions or comments in the window, I'll preface the next section. So DX for admins, hopefully we'll make a compelling case today for why you should be interested in this. I'll just say one thing. The idea here today is not to show you how to do all the things. Instead, it's more about what are the things that you should do and why this should be interesting to you. Having said that, we're definitely, I'll say it this way. Anything that's interesting to you is going to be learning, right? DX will be, if you're an admin, DX is something new. You may have never touched it. Maybe you have, but it's definitely going to require you to learn a new tool and a new something, right? We really think it's worthwhile. And based, again, on future feedback from you guys, we could do more hands-on sessions, but that's not today. So with that, just keep that in mind. Hopefully we'll show you some exciting things that will get you at the very least interested into trying this. We have a message from Ka Heng Kwang. Can you give example of how to utilize platform events? So platform events are really fascinating, but instead of answering that question, I'll post a link in the chat to a session that I just did in Apex Hours. This last weekend.
Yeah.
Not this one past one, but one before that. And it's a full webinar that I was leading that talked exactly about that. What are some really cool ways to use platform events that are not necessarily what Salesforce had in mind when they created it, but you know, us developers don't wait for the instructions; we just start to play. So, okay, I'll post that link in a second. In the meantime, John.
Yeah. So, you know, full disclosure, you're talking to the guy who's probably the biggest proponent of Salesforce DX and packaging and all the new features. If you know me, you know that I'm too excited about this. It's getting kind of crazy. At work, they've actually started a drinking game every time I say the word DX, and everybody's laid out drunk. It's terrible. Anyway, so, but I mean, let's talk about the, you know, how we can effectively use DX and how people, especially admins, can start to look at it. And so just DX is simply, you're driving. Sorry,
yep.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So at its end, DX is not a tool, but it is a tool set. It is not a tool, it is a bunch of features. It is a bunch of concepts that Salesforce has done and put all under a specific branded umbrella. DX is not any one thing, but DX is an acronym for developer experience. And there was a whole initiative a couple of years ago for Salesforce to change the way that we as developers, and when I say developers, I'm talking about declarative admins, I'm talking about the code junkies like me, and everybody in between. And it's how we interact with the org, how we build our applications, our products, and services going forward. So when you think about DX, that's what it is. It's not a specific thing, but it is a whole group of products and tools. And so next slide, please. And so
I can do that.
I'm going to say, you know, who Salesforce DX is for. I'm going to go up with Lacey for this one.
Yep, thanks. So this real fast, we have 3 types of admins. So we have the accidental admins. They didn't intend to get into Salesforce as much as their manager walked up to them and said, hey, somebody needs to do Salesforce, why not you? You spend as much time learning as much as you can about Salesforce, and you spend as much of your time doing your day job as you do actually working on the Salesforce platform. The next kind of admin is the developer consultant admin. You know what you're doing. You've been doing this for a couple years now. You know your way around the setup menu. Talking about the flow builder notes earlier got you really excited. And you spend most of your day using designing applications using clicks, not code. And then finally, we also have the enterprise production admin. This is somebody who thinks about integrating Salesforce with all of the really great tools that they have. They care a lot about what the maximum number of API calls are, and they have a few different developers working with them. They spend their days thinking about release schedules and integration with other tools. So, is Salesforce DX for you, the accidental admin? Yes. Is Salesforce DX for you?
Sorry, I screwed up the whole. I know how hard you guys worked on this.
Salesforce DX is for every single kind of admin: the accidental admin, the developer consultant admin, and the enterprise production admin. For the accidental admin, there's a bunch of really cool tools that you can start learning as part of your Salesforce journey. Remembering passwords, navigating pages, updating profile and permission set. And if you think of Salesforce DX as more of a holistic way of developing within Salesforce, learning DX now will enable you in the future. With the developer and the consultant admin, you're going to really like the source control, the scratch org, the packaging. I have not played with unmanaged packaging, and I'm so excited to get started with that. And then with the enterprise production admin, you get to be able to manage releases. You get to have so much more overview over your metadata, give you access to tools outside of Salesforce like GitHub, really kind of opens up the world of Salesforce to the rest of the development world.
So let's talk more about what Salesforce DX is and what it's not. So first thing is, again, DX is a marketing term. And so there you go. I'll just go ahead and start. And like I said, it's a collection of ideas. It's all about source control. And it's all about new types of orgs. Lacey alluded to it. It's scratch orgs, and scratch orgs being sort of a temporary type of Salesforce org, one that doesn't stick around for more than 30 days. And again, the biggest part of it that I think is the game changer to the whole scenario is it's a new type of packaging, a better way to organize our applications in our code bases, both declarative flows and Apex and all of it in between. And then finally, you know, DX is, among other things, a new CLI. And that's one of the things we're going to dive deeper into tonight is the CLI, for those who don't know, is command line interface. And basically, you're familiar with your Windows command line application, or if you're into the Mac world like I am, it's the terminal application. Basically, it's sit there and you type commands on the thing all day long. So a command line interface tool just is an application that's there and it responds to certain commands and lets you get into all kinds of different things. So next slide, please.
It reminds me of the DOS from
exactly DOS.
Yeah,
exactly
the
what
DOS
it is,
back in the day. Yeah.
I thought I was the only one who was old enough to remember that. So when we talk about the Salesforce development paradigm, though, I'm the oldest one here. I'll admit that. We're talking about, of course, the Salesforce CLI. It's also referred to as the Salesforce DX CLI. And again, we're talking about that as the tool design. This is the primary way every tool from here forward will interact with Salesforce orgs. And the next one, please. Again, we talked about scratch orgs. Think a very fresh environment that you can spin up in a matter of seconds that is totally empty. And so it becomes a green field where you can push all kinds of things in there. There's new tooling, especially around this new tool called VS Code or Visual Studio Code. If you're been around for a while, you remember the days of Eclipse and Maven's Mate. Well, VS Code is the new way to go forward. They Salesforce made the purpose decision to switch over to that tool and make that the de facto standard for going. And I think it's been a wonderful idea. If you've looked into source control, if you looked into just having the source code of an org down on your local desktop, it was very, very rigid directory structure, and it really struggled. And there wasn't a lot of flexibility, and sometimes things would get lost. One of the beautiful things that is going forward now is the DX source format. And what that basically means is that we're able to organize our code in more logical ways and logical directory structures that make much better sense. And then again, I'm going to say reimagined the concept of packaging. This is how we deliver our code to our environments. And so it's a whole new way of doing things, whole new set of possibilities that open up. A lot better, and if you come from the ISV route like I did, you know, this opens up so many more possibilities. But also, really in large enterprise class organizations, this is going to be, this one thing here will probably revolutionize the landscape of enterprise Salesforce development. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The next slide, please.
And I'll just say this again: a lot of the things that John is saying, you know, are very developer-y, right? We talk about VS Code. Wait, why do I need code? CLI, command line interface. Why do I need to write things? I can just click. You know, again, it's about you. It's all on to you to decide where you want your career to go and where you want your journey to go. These tools that are developer-centric in nature does not mean that you have to be a developer or even want to become a developer to be able to use them. But they do provide a tool set that, as an admin, you can now start to leverage as well. And that's what we're trying to show today.
Mm-hmm. So we were prepping for this, and Lacey asked this very legitimate question. And, you know, as an admin, why would she use DX over another declarative tool? So let's next slide. So if you're familiar with Twitter and you're familiar with the Salesforce Twitter subculture, there's a hashtag on Twitter, and it's all about why Salesforce admins drink. And this really is all of the war stories that all the Salesforce admins out there have of all kinds of crazy things that they run into on a daily basis. And hopefully some of these things resonate with you, especially if you're an admin in the larger environment. You know, you're working with lots of different orgs. I know as consultants, you can be all over the map on orgs. Where one of my clients right now, we have well over 100 sandboxes, and I've got some admins who are touching a lot of them every single day. You know, if, you know, simple things like remembering how to, do you struggle with remembering passwords from various orgs? You know, have you had to go through the pains of navigating one page to the next, to the next, to the next, to maybe update profiles or update specific fields on profiles? Do you hate clicking on all of those little dots to grant permission on one specific object? Well, you know, there are easier ways to do it from the command line and from the other way. So click the next button, please. The short message is SalesforceDX can help with all of these types of things going forward. So next slide, please. Let's talk about how you access SalesforceDX. And again, we're talking about, in this case, the Salesforce command line utility or command line interface. And again, go ahead and click on it through, please. And just click all the way through. So again, the CLI stands for command line interface. Again, it's just a simple tool. It's an application. And, you know, somebody once told me it's one more arrow in our quiver of tools that we can work with, or one more tool in our toolbox. It's very simple. It's an application that you go to Salesforce real quick. You can Google it, just Salesforce CLI download. You can download it, install it very quick. And you use it from either the Windows command line application, or on a Mac or Linux scenario, you would use the terminal application. And it has basically just a suite of commands that you can perform various functions. And, you know, this quote here was actually done by Peter Chetham, who's on the developer relations side of Salesforce's developer evangelist, and he's got so many titles behind his name. But he did a talk about the CLI for admins, and he basically said if you can write a formula, then you're able to, you have the skill set and what it takes to run the CLI. So I can't, you know, that cannot be understated. So next page, please. So out of the box, you know, the CLI can do a whole bunch of things, and so we just click on it. So everything from provisioning new users to assigning permission sets. Have you ever had to assign permission sets in bulk for various orgs and various users? You know, all these different things. All the data loading tasks that you would deal with, either through the bulk API or the SOAP API, can be accomplished via the CLI tool. So now, instead of having multiple tools to manage things, the CLI really is stacking up to be the single tool that you'll go to. And they even have this new tree data loading concept. So this is sort of a new type or API or data loading API that Salesforce offers. And basically, think about it this way. You can load an account and all of its contacts all at the same time. And so there's some limitations there, but it's still a kind of a cool, clever way to move accounts and contacts from one sandbox to another, and very easy to use and work with. You could create the S objects instead of going through all the different clicks and whatnot. You can set it up so that you basically provide a file with all the details of the S object. You go in and just say run the command. It'll push the S object up and create it into any org that you want. Again, we're talking about manipulating data and manipulating settings within the org. You can all accomplish from the command line interface. One of the cool things is monitoring limits. So, you know, if you're looking for a tool to automate the way that you tracking limits, and are you going to go and are you going to blow out the call out limit, or, well, actually that you won't worry about that now, but still a lot of different, there's a lot of limits that you can monitor that you would normally have to go through various pages to look at. Again, one of the big ones is cloning and creating and deleting sandboxes. All of that can be managed now from that one page, from the one tool. You don't have to go to that one page. Installing and removing managed packages, unlock packages, any type of package now can be done from the command line. And if you get into more complex scenarios where you need to run an Apex script, all of that can be done from the tool. So it's a lot of and that's not all of the out of the box features. You know, there's a whole bunch of other sets of functionality, but this is just some of the highlights that admins probably are going to be interested in. So when we talk about next page, please. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You can even use the CLI to open the web browser, open the org straight to the page that you're looking for. So, you know, and you don't even have to authenticate to do that. So that's a whole different story. One of the cool things about CLI is, you know, one of its advantages is when admins have to do repetitive tasks over and over and over, and maybe repetitive tasks in multiple environments. So if you have a scenario like that, that's good because the CLI, you can script it with, script these tasks with the CLI. And so next part, I mean, one of the key powerful benefits of the CLI is its ability to work with any kind of scripting tool out there. So the Windows scripting tool, PowerShell, or shell scripts over in the Mac OS and terminal world. Maybe you know about scripting, maybe you don't, that's okay. The thing is, there's definitely a tool that potentially in the raw materials there to help you automate and make it easier on your going forward. So I wanted to stress that. When we talk about the CLI, you know, it manages all of your credentials. So if you're like me, you're logged into about 17,000 different orgs. You don't want to type in the username and password every single time you log into those things. And so again, this CLI allows you to log in once and it just manages everything going forward. So OHA, does click at a decent rate? You can easily switch between different credentials that once you've logged in and they're all set up. And all of the authentications are OAuth based, which is important because, you know, if your password changes, next one, OHA. If your password changes in the org, it's an OAuth token, which means that you don't have to change the command line interface.
And that also means that no password are stored locally on your machine.
No passwords are stored because, yeah, I mean, Salesforce got it right when they started thinking about how the tool accessed the org. This time they got it right. So let's remember, this is the basic command. It's basically one command that you just need to remember: force auth web login. And don't worry about it if you forget it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it next click through. Go ahead and click all the way through. I mean, but basically this command will open a browser. You'll authenticate with your regular credentials at one time, and then it will go ahead and store those credentials going forward. And then if you need to see a list quickly about which orgs are you currently authenticated to, it's just SFDX. And I'm sorry, SFDX is the command or the actual application name. So when you install the CLI, you access those commands by typing the first word SFDX, and then the rest of it, force org list, is just a command of the tool and the application. So again, once you, like OHA said, this is be something that you'll learn. This is something, it's new, it's different. So yeah, you're going to play with it a couple times. You're going to mess it up the very first time, but the second time you won't, and it'll be great. You'll be getting moving from there. So next slide, please. You know, one thing about a tool that has so many options to it, you sit there and struggle, well, how do I remember all these commands? So let's click through. The beauty is the CLI will remember all these commands for you. And there are very simple ways to find out what commands are available in your installation. So the first command there, SFDX force, and that will basically display all the documentation for all of the command line utilities, but also all of the DX developer guides and any other setup guides, any information that you need in the umbrella of DX, that's accessible straight from the command. So again, it's very easy to map. And then just adding that -H flag will allow you to see all of the different commands, and we'll look at them in a little bit. But it'll allow you to just quickly see at a glance all the different commands and topics that are available from the tool. And the beautiful thing that I like is that every command everywhere in this DX CLI tool has a -H flag. And that basically means I'll type the command -H and I'll see the entire information about that command going forward. So that's how come I don't remember it. That when I'm teaching developers and admins about how to use the CLI, the very first thing I tell them to do is always remember there's a -H. And that's how you'll find out what's going on going forward. So this is just some tips that we found when working with this. So let's take a look at what the CLI actually looks like. So this is, again, this is a terminal window. First click, please. You know, up there you'll see SFDX force H, and we just talked about it. Again, this is the type of format that you'll see the commands being executed. This is, again, just a simple command that you can touch. But when you execute that, it'll show, among other things, how to use that command. So it'll show the SFDX force, and then those brackets talk about different option flags that you can use and how the entire command with its parameters fits together. Next one, please. It lists for each command, it talks about the options. In this case, this one only has 2 flags. It's a JSON flag and a log level. Not very important when it comes to this particular command, but there might be other ones where you say, which org would you like me to log into and execute this command from? You know, if you have a, if you're running a query against the org, it'll be a parameter that says, here, give me the query that the SQL query you're really trying to execute. Another one is, I want to assign a permission set to a user. Well, it's got a flag that says, tell me about the user that you want me to assign it to. The last part of this command is all commands sort of come together and are grouped together in logical ways. And so sometimes the words represent groups, and the group is just what is called a topic. So when you look at some of these topics, force : Apex, well, that's all the commands dealing with creating an Apex class and executing Apex Anonymous. There's other ones like force community. Well, those are all the commands that you can use to execute and administer Salesforce communities, activate them and work going forward. Force limits is all about reading the org's force limits. And there are other commands below that level specific to what you need to do. But again, these are the topics that you deal with. Force data is all about working with the data, bulk API loading or updating data from there. There's force org, so things like creating and deleting sandboxes are dealt with underneath the force org topic there. And force user, again, we're talking about creating users and assigning permission sets to users. That's kind of the things there. So it's a good way to start, look at the terminal, see the tool, and then you can start drilling down on these things. You can type force : user with the -H, and then see all the commands and topics underneath that. So it's a good way to sort of slowly work your way through and get familiar with all the different applications or files that are available there. So,
and if this looks scary to you and you've never used the command line interface, all I'll say is this: it's probably scarier than it really is. And the only way you'll ever find out if you can deal with it is to try it.
It's scarier than it really is?
Well, it looks scarier than it really is what I said.
It looks scarier than it really is.
Yes. It's scarier than it really is.
No, I mean, here's what I tell the admins that I've trained. There was a time when the setup menu in the GUI looked overwhelming and you didn't know you were going to get used to it. But through repetition, just like any other thing, that's when you start to get familiar with it. That's when it starts to make sense. That's when you start to see how it all comes together. And it's, like you said, it's not scary. It's not thing. It's just new. And that's really true with all Salesforce. All these things are new to somebody at some point in time, and you're just going to have to go through it. And that's fine. You went through it before. It's going to be no different. So, you know, but see, we've talked so far about the power of the tool out of the box. But one of the beauties of the whole DX command line interface is that, you know, as the first one is saying, it is extensible by the community. The community has long suffered with our tools in that we had to wait for Salesforce to get off its keister and make some things work for us. But now they've actually given us a tool that empowers us to go out and do the things we need to do when we want, you know, if they haven't solved it, then we'll figure it out. And the way you add on extra functionality is called these custom plugins. These custom plugins plug into the command line interface. So you can install these from, you know, to add more functionality and commands to CLI, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But the way you go about doing it is very straightforward. Again, that's the command right there. SFDX plugins : install, and the specific plugin name that you're looking for. And we'll talk about where to find plugins and what are those at. But once it's installed, you can access any of the commands going forward and see it and just move forward. So, but, you know, let's talk about what kind of plugins are out there. So next slide, please. So there's a plugin out there called Shane SFDX plugins.
Great name.
It's a great name. I mean, it's a ridiculous name. It was named by Shane McLaughlin, who is a developer evangelist for Salesforce. And he has created this monstrosity, if you will, of commands and custom plans, and it's a huge Swiss Army knife in and of itself. So click the next one, please. You know, some of the commands that are available are, you know, managing AI data sets and streaming system events directly to your terminal. You know, have you ever, if you're like me, you work with a lot of Apex code and a lot of Apex projects, and sometimes you want to take advantage of an open source project and put it over here. Well, that deploy open source project directly from GitHub tool is phenomenal. It's a very easy way to go ahead and take that code and push it straight into a Scratch org. You know, he's gotten some very interesting commands around IoT, so Internet of Things, and the new functionality that's coming out with those types of APIs. You know, some of the things like create tabs for objects. Well, oddly enough, that wasn't part of the out-of-the-box feature of the core plugin or the core tool, so he added it and made it up. One of the cool things I like down on the bottom right there is, you know, review who has access to an object via profiles and permissions. He's actually created a command that will go into the org, and depending on the object and that you're looking at, he can give you a printout, or the tool can give you a printout of who actually has access and what type of access to it.
So, this is huge, because as an admin, I know that when I still work with customers and do admin tasks, right? So today we use profiles as little as we can, and we use permission sets extensively. However, there's no single place in the UI, in the setup menu or anywhere, that you can go and say, this object, show me who has access to it across all my permission sets or across all of my profiles together. So by itself, this is, if you work with profiles and permission sets a lot, this specific bullet point could be the reason why you want to install DX tomorrow or tonight. Or actually, stop listening to us, go install DX. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, even the next one is a more frequent use case. We've got profiles out there, and we need to, like you said, the new best practices moving more and more towards permission set. And this provides a handy little tool device to take the profile and convert it into a permission set that you can then tweak from there. So very powerful plugin. You know, all the commands that I've got listed there are not nearly all the commands that he's actually baked into this command. So it's one of the major ones out there. So let's go to the next slide. There's some other ones out there. The SF Power Kit is a custom plugin that Accenture guys have actually created. But again, it's another one of these major ones that has all kinds of different commands available to it. Things like... Yep.
Is this hyperlink npmjs.com? Is that like a secret guide to Salesforce DX? Like, what is npmjs.com?
So npm.js is Node package manager. Node or Node.js is a specific type of language. The Node package manager JS website is the keeper of all modules, plugins for that language. The reason it's here is that Salesforce CLI was built on the Node.js language. And so all of its infrastructure piggybacks off of this industry standard, basically, artifact management or package manager. And so all of the plugins, but when you create a new plugin, a custom plugin, and you upload it so that everybody can get access to it, it comes to this particular spot. And this particular page gives all of the details about how to use the plugin, the commands, work from it. Again, you can look at this page, you can execute the command with a -H, and you can see the same information going forward as well. So, but there's a host of crazy amount of commands in this one as well.
And yeah, and I'd like to point out the second one, again, something that can be very helpful to admins with extreme prejudice. If you ever needed to activate or deactivate a trigger, you know that it's something you typically want to go to your developer, or if you're a more advanced admin, you know that you can deploy an inactive version of your trigger from a sandbox or a Scratch org. Now you can actually do it with a simple command line right from the CLI tool. So again, something extremely, extremely helpful to admins in my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, even things like refreshing sandboxes. I mean, the refreshing sandboxes has been a feature that's been available at the API level for quite a while. but he just basically, these guys just wrapped it and made it available so that if you wanted to, you can just refresh. And again, I talked about it earlier, you can script these things to occur. So you could actually write a script, a rudimentary script, and just sort of execute it and walk away and forget it. And, you know, you could maybe delay the script's execution until later or whatever. Maybe you're sleeping and you want to start the refresh late at night. Who knows? There are a lot of different possibilities here, but, you know, it's just a great example of the power that's available through custom plugins. So, and this last link is a page on GitHub, and its purpose is just to be basically an index for lots of different community built custom plugins that are available and free of charge, and everybody can make use of them all day long. So if you're interested in finding out more possibilities and more things out there, there's a lot of things with data loading, a lot of things, there's a lot of just different things that are available out there. It's crazy. So,
so just look at this list of plugins that's available right now, and each one of them will then have
more details about, so
a lot more detail about
and the usage. Yeah, so this is Shane's plugin, and it goes.
John, I see your name in a few of those.
I've contributed. It's fun stuff. Yeah, but, you know, absolutely. So next page, please. So, you know, we've talked about the CLI, and we've talked about a lot of different things that admins honestly need to think about and pay attention, because it is a whole section of Salesforce that can improve your life, and it is not taken advantage of right now. So there have been three big talks that I'm aware of around this. Again, this Peter Chittum guy, and but some of these talks were done at Dreamforce. One of them was done at London Calling. Excellent talks, great background, great hands-on type approach, why you should get into it, and I highly recommend these things. Next page, please.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what we were saying, right? If you're ready to take the plunge and you're saying, this is something I want to learn, and this is something I should get exposed to, or I want to get exposed to, these are probably the places where you want to start after this session.
Yeah.
And now that we are all trapped inside of our homes now, there's no better time to be exposed to Salesforce CLI instead of COVID-19.
You've already binge watched your favorite show 3 times, so you need to look at something else. As far as recommended trailheads, these are some of the ones that we recommend as far as getting more information about some of the basics in DX world. And so again,
but wait, there's more.
There's more. There was a series of blogs that came out 2 years ago about what is Salesforce DX, and they were primarily written by Zane Turner, but a few other developer advantages contributed. But they were excellent. They're excellent write-ups about what is Salesforce DX. So don't trust me. Don't listen to how I'm, talking crazy about the whole world of DX. Listen to somebody who's actually going to explain it to you a little sanely. And then finally, the last one is a series of blogs that are specific to the unlock packaging, or the second generation packaging. And again, they're very easy to read and great primers for anybody interested in getting more information about this. So highly recommend it. So questions? I think we can just unmute probably everybody, or how are we going to do this?
Yeah, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. Let me just do that.
Yeah, for those of you who are interested, I've been eating, my daughter made fresh batch cookies, because of course that's what she does when she's locked up in the house and got nothing better to do.
Hi, Sandy.
Sandy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, Sandy.
That was
it's always nice to have a New York community leader join the Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, well, I hate to say it, but I think one of the best parts about being locked in your house is that you can't really go anywhere. So I was like, all right, let me just find every virtual Trailblazer community meeting I can find, and I'm hopping on.
Well, we're glad you chose us as one of them.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all.
Same here. Do you have any questions, or you just wanted to say hi?
I just wanted to say hi.
So anybody else has any questions?
Yes, we will be sending out these slides.
Yes. So this recording will go on the RVA YouTube channel probably by tomorrow with a link to the slide deck as well as the transcript of this recording. So we now are transcripting this recording.
We are?
Sweet.
Man, we're getting high tech. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm assuming that you guys aren't asking questions because your minds are just so blown right now. You're finding it hard to come down and put all the thoughts in your brain into words. But we do want to take any questions. So take a moment to think about. We'll get on to the next couple slides before we finish, and you can still continue to think about asking questions in that time. So for us developers, our next developer user group, which may or may not be virtual, depending on how quickly somebody finds a remedy to our worldwide catastrophe right now. We're going to look at building CLI plugins. So all these plugins that are available right now, people built them. Those people were developers, just like you and I, and maybe even a little bit like John. And we'll look at how you actually do that, how you can build your own plugins and why you would even want to build your own plugins. And that all kind of boils back to that scripting, how you can take tasks that maybe are manual or that maybe, require a lot of steps that you have to do in a repeating kind of some frequency, and how you can build tools to either automate it for yourself or automate it and share it with the community.
Yeah. Fair warning, I plan to take that talk starting out high level and then just slowly work into the weeds. And so everybody has a threshold of how deep in the weeds they want to go. And so you'll eventually figure out your place where you're going to jump off. So.
It's definitely a more technical topic.
Yeah. Are you going to warn people as you get deeper and deeper in? Like, it's okay, you can leave now.
Absolutely.
I guess it depends if we're doing this virtual or not. If there's pizza in the room, people will stay.
That's true. Yes, good point. Absolutely. So yeah, we'll figure it out and we'll announce those dates coming up. But,
and real fast for the admins,
yes,
wanted to mention that we do have a meeting coming up. I believe it's April 17th. I did just get an email today saying that April 15th, just kidding. Nope, 8th. April 8th. Sorry, guys. On
13,
top of it.
15, 8.
Pick a date.
April 1st.
April Fool's Day. No, it'll be April 8th. That should have been in everyone's emails that in order to sign up for the link, that I just got the email today that will be virtual. So we'll be sending out the Zoom information and everything. And for my admins here, if you have any questions, please let me know. The topic is advanced tips and tricks. I'm very excited about it. Come with your own favorite tips and tricks. And I have a bunch to make you guys the best admin that you can possibly be. So April 8th.
And more.
Awesome.
And more.
As always, you can connect with us on our community. Our Trailblazer community link is right there. This is where we can have conversations. You can ask questions, share files, share resources. This is our own personal meeting space. Our Trailblazer community, and the second link is where you would find both the admin and the developer user groups, and that is specifically for signing up to get notifications for meetups, and that is where you RSVP'd for today's meetup. If you're only on the admin group or only on the dev group, I highly recommend you sign up to both of them. I always say that to be a good developer, you have to be a good admin. And even if you're only admin, you have no aspirations to ever become a developer because who wants to write code? It's always good to.
I have very different reactions.
I always think that, just increasing of your vocabulary, getting exposed to things, whether it's something that you understand fully when you leave the meeting, or it's just something that somewhat kind of zooms by your head, just getting exposed to these things that other people you work with could do will make you a better admin because you know what you can ask your developers, you know what can be done versus just trusting people that may or may not know about these things. So
You
join
learn
both
more
of
about
them.
the platform. Yeah, you learn more about the platform, which makes you a much better admin. It helps you learn more about Salesforce. Yeah, I became a better admin when I started actually paying attention to what Ohad and John were trying to teach me.
And that's, most people don't pay attention to what we say, so. Okay, so with that, we're basically at the end of our presentation. And I want to open the floor again if anybody has any questions at this point. Otherwise, to summarize, DX is awesome, whether you're an admin or developer. Get moving on flows, get moving on all these things we talked about today, because those are really the futures of this platform. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining us today. Sandy, thank you for joining us. John, Lacey, any parting words?
April 8th, virtual meeting.
Right, yeah.
Advanced tips and tricks.
I'll be there.
So thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.